Christians before Christ is an argument for mythicism. It seeks to establish that there were Jesus-worshipping communities practicing before 30 AD, the supposed date of Jesus' death. This would of course make it impossible for the death and resurrection of Jesus to be the key event in the founding of Christianity. It is generally true that the wide distribution and the diversity of the very early Christian church places a significant time constraint on its development between the dates of Jesus' death and resurrection and of Paul's letters some 20 to 25 years later. Paul's letters make little reference to the history of the congregations he is writing to, and neither do they contain comments which would enable us to infer how long the congregations had existed. There are, however, ancient writings that may suggest the existence of Christian communities before 30 AD. One of these is the first epistle of Clement to the Corinthians. This letter has been known about since ancient times. The epistle is a long letter at over 12,000 words. It was occasioned by a dispute that had arisen in the Church of Corinth that resulted in several presbyters being ousted. It is conventionally dated between 80 and 140 AD and is traditionally dated to the year 96, because in the second paragraph it refers to successive sudden and calamitous events that have occurred to the Church in Rome. And this is traditionally associated with the persecution of Christians at the end of the reign of Emperor Domitian in AD 96. But there is no concrete reason for believing that this is the calamity that the letter refers to. The other significant contributor to dating is historical context, and this means where the letter fits in our understanding of the history of the early church. Clement refers to the Corinthian church as being ancient, and also mentions members who have been faithful from childhood to old age, and beliefs held by our fathers before us, and we are now old, both of which suggest that the churches in question, there being the Roman and Corinthian churches, had been in existence for some time. How long is not clear, but it had to be more than about 40 years. In terms of church history, then, this means the letter must have been written at least 40 years after the 30s AD, and this leads to the conclusion that the successive, sudden and calamitous events were the Domitian persecution. This dating is the reason why the letter is attributed to Clement. He was Bishop of Rome at the time. The letter is, however, anonymous, simply stating that it is from the Roman to the Corinthian church, with no reference to who wrote it. Now, there is a major and specific problem with this dating scheme, and that is that the letter refers in the present tense to sacrifices occurring at the temple in Jerusalem. Chapter 41. Not in every place, brethren, are the daily sacrifices offered, or the peace offerings, or the sin offerings, and the trespass offerings, but in Jerusalem only. The letter also refers to Peter and Paul and to apostolic writings, and therefore, assuming our dates of these is correct, must date from after about 50 AD. What this means is that if the letter was not written later than 70 AD, and it implies churches that had been in existence for over 40 years, then there had to be churches in existence before 30 AD. And this is obviously a damning conclusion for historicity. No one has come up with an argument that this bit was added or altered after the writing of the original letter, partly because the likely motivation to alter it would simply delete it or place it in the past tense, as such alterations were either accidental or motivated by the Church's desire to suppress heresy. As the reference to the Jerusalem temple has a much harder dating than the non-specific reference to calamities which are used to date the letter to 96 AD, the case for Christians prior to 30 AD from Clement's letter seems fairly strong. Another text used by Lawrence is the Epistle of Barnabas. We have a complete and early version of this epistle, which appears at the end of the New Testament in the Codex Sinaiticus. It is written in Greek and is dated in the range 100 to 131 AD. The main theme of the letter is that Christianity has superseded the religion of Second Temple Judaism. We don't know who wrote it, when it was written, or who it was written to. The dating issue arises in chapter 16, verses 3 and 4, where the author states, Furthermore, he says again, "Behold, those who tore down this temple will themselves build it. It is happening now. For because of their fighting it was torn down by the enemies, and now the very servants of the enemies will themselves rebuild it." Before I go, there is one other point about Clement and Barnabas. Whenever their dates, all agree they are relatively early Christian texts, and as with many other early Christian texts, such as the genuine epistles of Paul, they appear to be completely unaware of the gospel stories. They refer to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, but never to his sayings or deeds, nor his historical or geographical contexts. So while the case for Jesus worshipping communities predating 30 AD is not proven, there are reasons from Clement and the known diversity and distribution of early Jesus worshipping congregations to believe it credible. If that is accepted, then it weakens the case for a historical Jesus substantially.